Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Martin from CAFII. We're going to start our webinar in just 1 minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with CAFII. We're just waiting for attendees to continue to flow in. We'll start the webinar in just a few moments. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and welcome to this first CAFII webinar of 2025 on a conversation with FISRA's Innovation Office, a partnership with FinTech Cadence to support FinTech innovation in Ontario. My name is Keith Martin, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Financial Institutions and Insurance, or CAFII. On behalf of myself and the CAFII Board of Directors, we'd like to thank you for joining our webinar today. CAFII is a not-for-profit association dedicated to the development of an open and flexible insurance marketplace. Our 15 members include the insurance arms of Canada's major banks and credit unions, along with their insurer partners which underwrite credit protection insurance and travel insurance. Members of the audience, if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the panelists during this webinar, please send them to me as the host using Zoom's Q&A function, and I will pose them on your behalf. Well, we're very fortunate today to have two highly knowledgeable individuals join us. Stephanie Appave is Director, Innovation, Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario, or FISRA. Stephanie has extensive experience in policy and program design with a particular focus on innovation and economic development in Ontario. Prior to joining FISRA, she held a number of leadership positions in the Provincial Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. She was instrumental in leading the development of a number of provincial sector strategies that focused on supporting innovation and driving economic growth. Stephanie has been leading FISRA's Innovation Office since March 2023, driving business development and engagement opportunities with the broader financial services ecosystem to strengthen awareness and recognition of FISRA as a regulator that supports innovation. Layial El-Hadi is the Executive Director of FinTech Cadence, an organization that aims to create startups that will help solve the financial industry's problems through technology integration. She's also a former professor at Concordia University in Montreal. She was previously the Chief Financial Officer of Appave, a specialized industrial equipment company. She sits on the advisory board of Queen University's Master of Financial Innovation and Technology and the Stakeholder Advisory Council of Payments Canada. In 2022 and 2023, Layial was nominated for the DMZ's Women of the Year Award. In 2019, Layial was identified as one of the Digital Finance Institute's top 50 women in fintech. In 2018, Layial was awarded Mentor of the Year for having the most significant impact guiding Montreal-based startups. I also want to welcome CAFII's research analyst, Robin Jennings, who will join me in asking questions to the panelists. Now, just before we get the webinar underway, I want to extend a special welcome to a number of VIP guest attendees. In addition to many representatives from our 15 CAFII member companies and our 9 associates, which are key supplier companies to the bancassurance sector, we have VIP attendees today from allied industry associations, such as the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, or CLHIA, the Travel and Health Insurance Association of Canada, or THIA, from the Canadian Bankers Association, or the CBA, from CADRI, the Canadian Association of Direct Relationship Insurers, and as well from a number of insurance and financial services regulator and policymaker authorities, including the following: the Insurance Council of British Columbia, the Government of Alberta, Quebec's Autorité des Marchés Financiers, or the AMF, and the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario, or FISRA. Welcome to you all. So now to get started, Stephanie and Layial will each make a short presentation. Stephanie, over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Hopefully, can everyone see the screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Give me one more second. How's that?
Perfect. We see it.
Great, thanks. Okay. So thanks again, Keith. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm going to briefly talk about FSRA's innovation mandate, the Innovation Office, and our regulatory sandbox to get us started. It's been a few years since the Innovation Office's last CAFII webinar, so I'll start with a quick refresher about some of the things that we've been up to. As we know, FSRA is a regulator that is thinking differently with respect to its principle-based and outcomes-focused approach to regulation. FSRA is also a regulator that encourages innovation and experimentation. In fact, supporting innovation in FSRA's regulated sectors is a foundational part of its mandate, and innovation is actually one of FSRA's statutory objects. And the Innovation Office was established to help FSRA deliver on that mandate and facilitate responsible innovation in its regulated sectors. FSRA is able to support innovation through exemptive authority granted to FSRA's CEO by the Government of Ontario and by exercising its discretionary powers and other associated tools. So you might be wondering, how does a regulator actually support innovation? So as I mentioned, FSRA established an innovation office to help facilitate innovation in our regulated sectors. We provide support, advice, and guidance to both regulated and unregulated firms, helping them to find the right path forward, the appropriate regulatory tool to move a viable idea forward, or to help address a barrier when the current approach is seen to be a hurdle. We released an innovation framework that outlines the strategy and guiding principles for how FSRA supports responsible innovation. We launched FSRA's test and learn environment, which other regulators call a regulatory sandbox, and that really provides a safe space for experimentation while also ensuring consumer protection. And one of our top priorities is ensuring open dialogue and collaboration. We know innovation requires collaboration, and the Innovation Office is always looking to find opportunities for how we can work together. And we're continuously engaging with a wide range of stakeholders and partners. Those engagements have resulted in publishing 3 opportunity reports that reflect discussions about innovation with the insurance sector, mortgage broker sector, and credit union sector. We've also partnered with various innovation hubs to host pitch meetings, lunch and learns, and office hours, including the partnership we're here today to talk about with FinTech Cadence. And we engage with different experts on various innovation trends and stay connected to our many peer regulators. So FSRA's regulatory sandbox, as we call it, the test and learn environment, is also known as the TLE. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about FSRA's regulatory sandbox, the test and learn environment, because it's the big rock in our innovation jar. And I recognize that some of you may not be as familiar with this great tool, or it may have been a while since you've last heard about the TLE. So it's a regulatory sandbox is really a dedicated space to support the testing of innovative products, services, and business models in the real market. It essentially gives companies the opportunity to test activities that aren't permitted under the current regulatory framework for a limited time, but it also puts in place safeguards to ensure consumer protection during testing. And in turn, it allows us to monitor the impacts to the marketplace, businesses, and consumers. Experimenting and testing using the TLE provides important insights on the viability of a new product or approach in the market, and it also helps to identify any unintended risk. And if that situation arises, the company and FSRA work together to collaboratively manage those potential risks to ensure we avoid any consumer harm. TLEs are open to all market participants, including incumbents registered with FSRA and also unregulated firms. And the Innovation Office is here to help businesses work through the TLE application and the development process. There are currently 2 active TLE projects. The first is the Direct Access Model TLE, which is testing a novel distribution model for commercial insurance products, and that launched in August 2023. And then we also have the Territories TLE, which allows auto insurers to propose and test territory rate changes within the GTA. That launched last year, and there are 11 auto insurers participating in that test in particular. So now that you know a little bit more about the test and learn and what it does, you might be asking, how can this help me? So the TLE is an opportunity, as I mentioned, to test and refine an innovation in the real world. And one of the key benefits includes the Innovation Office and FSRA's regulatory sector experts, helping the company to build out the design and the parameters of the test and figuring out together what's involved when it's live. During testing, companies are able to get insights into how an innovation behaves in a real market. It allows us to learn more about the innovations being tested, getting real-time insights, and it provides a safe space to identify unanticipated issues while also giving us the ability to identify potential risks early and then manage those risks. Regulators are able to gain insights to inform future regulatory activities, and companies receive beneficial insights as well as guidance on regulatory expectation. And the hope is that those tests result in solutions that benefit the entire financial ecosystem. So meeting with the Innovation Office is a really important first step. Our focus is to better understand your innovative idea and work to find the right path to move that idea forward, or to address a barrier that you've identified when the current approach is seen as a hurdle. We're always actively building out a pool of potential test partners, and we're keen and eager to hear from companies. So please reach out to us. We've included the email address here, and we hope to hear from companies.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Layial, I'll pass it over to you now.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you very much, Keith, for having us here. And Stephanie, thank you for that really brilliant overview on the work that you guys are doing. I'm really here to present the work of FinTech Cadence and kind of give that visibility of the value of a partnership with FSRA. For those of you who haven't heard of FinTech Cadence before, we are the largest FinTech incubator across Canada. Our mission and the work that we're doing is really focused on advancing the financial system to serve all Canadians for the better. And I know that seems like a very lofty ambition and vision, but we're truly trying to work with entrepreneurs, the financial sector, regulators, the government, and academia to ensure that there are great products available for Canadians and Canadian consumers and small businesses and businesses alike. And that's really the kind of work that we're trying to do. The way we look at the development of the ecosystem is really around 3 main focus areas. The first is around education. So this is where we work with universities and academia on a couple of components. The first being curriculum advocacy, ensuring that FinTech programs are being installed into curriculum and academia programs. The second is around research commercialization and research integration with industry. There's a lot of work being done, some which is really clear cut that aligns with the financial sector, and some that might be more complementary to the financial sector. This is where we work with researchers, PhDs, and master's students to see, can their idea be commercialized, and or is there value to bringing this research into the industry for companies and entities that are already working in the space. And lastly, we work very carefully with education to ensure there's a very healthy pipeline of talent that goes through the ecosystem as well. The next area that we work on, which is around collaboration, and this is kind of going to be the real key to the conversation that we're going to be having today, but it's to work with various stakeholders that are operating in the ecosystem and assisting them with, one, their relationship with fintechs, their awareness education around what's happening in the fintech ecosystem, the startups that are there and the fintechs that have developed since then, and really identifying challenges that they're having and how the innovation ecosystem can be complementary and not a challenger to the work that they're doing. All of this, though, and as I started off earlier on saying, we are an incubator, all of this is to support early stage fintech startups. You'll hear a lot of organizations say they support early stage. The way we define that period is anywhere from the ideation stage. So I have an idea about this solution all the way through to what we call pre-series A investments. So you're really looking at a company that's gotten investments between $2 to $5 million. or really a company, if you want to think about it, that has sales and is operating and in market and tested. So that's the work that we do, and we've spent a long time, 7 to 8 years actually, working on developing the ecosystem. Our headquarters are based in Montreal, but we have since expanded into Toronto, Calgary, and Alberta, as well as the Atlantic region as well, and hopefully soon in Vancouver. So really good visibility on what that ecosystem looks like coast to coast. Now, many people might not be familiar with what does that journey really look like. You might hear of the bigger fintech companies and assume, okay, they kind of start this way, or this is how it works. But there's really a very fine-tuned pipeline. And for the sake of today's conversation, we're going to assume that this pipeline is linear, but please note that there's always different cyclical components of it. But it really does start stemming with, does talent, whether that's university students or industry, such as people maybe perhaps on this phone call, are they aware that fintech solutions are needed in the market? Are they building those? Are they working with industry to solve those challenges? And then are they growing and scaling as a business? And do they have an integrated business model that can be scaled? And so that's a big part of the pipeline that we focus on and build on. If you're interested in any of our programs, we offer programs from anyone who is in the sector, who's just really interested in learning more about fintech, all the way through if you have an idea and you want to build it. And we also have events. If you're interested in anything that we do, please do spend some time on our website and look and see if there's anything there for you. I won't spend time on this call kind of going over that. Some of the kind of key areas that I would also like to highlight is around our metrics and kind of see the development of how startups are growing. So you'll see that we have startups that operate across all not all 9 provinces, sorry, across all 9 provinces. We also see that there are quite a lot of industry that we engage with for coaching and mentorship purposes. And of course, that there are over 212 startups that are in our pipeline that we work with very, very closely here as well. For those who are interested to see what kind of verticals we work with, you'll see those on the bottom left of your screen right now. Verticals are really the subsectors that fall under fintech. For today's purposes, we're really going to be focusing on the insurance and the insurtech solutions. Insurtech in Canada is one of the strongest fintech verticals and is continuing to grow. There's a lot of opportunities happening within the space. And so really kind of excited. I know we're going to explore that a little bit later on today in the call, but really excited to kind of see how innovation solutions are coming into all points of the insurance process, and how really in Canada, I think we're poised to be one of the strongest insurtech countries globally as well. Here's just a quick example of some of the startups we work with. You may have heard of some of them, but like we said, we work coast to coast, and the country at large is also kind of showing a lot of positive signs around fintech. So kind of happy to kind of showcase these companies here. I'll quickly give an overview of what the fintech sector looks like here in Canada. Now, these numbers are disputed depending on who you speak with. We estimate that there is between 1,500 all the way till maybe 2,200 fintechs that operate in Canada. You might hear more, you might hear less, but really what it comes down to is, are you an innovation solution in the financial service that integrates technology? Then you often will be classified as a fintech, and that does not include the incumbents. We see Ontario, I don't think that will come as a surprise to many people, as one of the leading fintech areas in Canada. Quebec's very, very strong second. We also see quite a lot of strong fintech growth happening in BC. What we don't see here, but I do think should be very relevant to everyone's radar, is that Alberta is investing a lot in their fintech space, including insurance space. So Alberta is definitely a province to look at. And then I think the next 3 to 5 years, this map will probably shift. And we'll be talking a lot more about the strategies that Alberta has implemented when it comes to fintech. When we're looking and assessing the fintech ecosystem at large, and we're determining, well, what really makes a sector strong, and what is it that we have in Canada that's really allows us to have a strong formula, we look at the following variables. So FIs that you see here on the screen are financial institutions. Are they engaged? Are they excited to work with the innovation sector? Are they excited to work with startups? Do we have talent? I think it's not arguable here in Canada. We're incredibly strong in this area. We see a lot of what's happening around artificial intelligence. We see a lot of the blockchain technologies from Ethereum, et cetera, that we're here based in Canada. So when it comes to talent and support and technology, we're very, very strong. And then capital as well, sometimes disputed, but definitely in Canada, we have a strong venture capital investor and angel network as well for our startups to go through. Just to quickly start summarizing here towards the end, what you'll start seeing, and again, we said we're going to talk about the insurtech sector, but what you see in Canada in terms of the strongest verticals, you'll see payment technology, lending tech, Investment tech and wealth tech are very strong as well. But like you said, insurtech, just by nature of our insurance sector, is very strong and a lot of opportunities there as well. We'll close off here with some of the areas that we really think will impact fintech in the next 3 to 5 years. Open banking, I know, is a conversation that happens ad nauseum at this point, but I think very relevant to talk about how regulations are going to impact the growth of the fintech sector. We have a lot of beachhead markets that are available that we haven't even started to scratch the surface on. Innovation components part of it yet. We're starting to see a lot more collaborations. Of course, collaborations such as the ones you're going to hear a bit more about today with FISRA and FinTech Cadence, but as well, a lot of collaborations happening between fintechs and incumbents as well. And I think we're starting to see it less as a combative relationship and more as a complementary and a collaborative one. And then last but not least, as our technology develops, as we start seeing the growth, I know probably everyone on this call is sick of hearing about how AI is going to shift everything, but it really would be amiss for us not to talk about the more advanced some of these technologies get, the more consumers are just going to be expecting different kind of products, and incumbents and traditional service providers are going to have to adapt to adjust to that. So I'm really excited to be sat here today and supporting Stephanie as we talk about the FISRA FinTech Cadence partnership. But if you are interested in learning more about the FinTech ecosystem, if you're interested in learning more about how we can work and collaborate with you, then I'm more than happy to jump on a call with you guys and kind of go through that as well. So I'll stop here, Keith, and I'll hand that back to you.
All right, great. Well, that's excellent. Very interesting presentations. And I think we had the ability to get a good understanding of what FISRA's Innovation Office as well as FinTech Cadence are doing. What I want to talk about first, Stephanie and Layial, is the partnership. So we've understood your two organizations, but you are working together. This was very recently launched in September 2024. And I'd like to understand a little more about the objectives of this partnership, the key features. And you've mentioned some of the activities. Maybe you could tell us some of your plans. So Stephanie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think, we'll kind of break up some of the elements of what you covered in your question, Keith. So for FISRA, we feel that the partnership announced last September was a critical first step forward for FISRA. It really is a unique opportunity to showcase how the regulator and an innovation hub, which you don't usually see, can work together to support innovation in our financial services sector. We think it's important to highlight how FISRA can be an active partner in that innovation ecosystem. And we feel that this partnership really nicely brings together FISRA's approach to responsible innovation and FinTech Cadence's innovation expertise and connections. I don't know, Layial, if you have anything to add before I get into the main objectives.
No, I think you said it really well, Stephanie. And maybe the last thing I'll just quickly add on is we know that, of course, like Stephanie with FISRA, you guys are really focused on the regulation components. We live and breathe the innovation side of things. So it just makes sense for this kind of partnership to complement each other's work in that sense.
Great, thanks, Layial. I would say from the Innovation Office perspective, there's really three kind of key objectives that we're hoping to get out of this partnership. And it really sort of focuses on establishing stronger connections between FISRA, the innovation ecosystem, FinTech startups that are looking to bring solutions to the market. We know how important it is to have strong connections between industry and the regulator. And we do feel that this partnership is going to help facilitate that direct engagement and dialogue with the Innovation Office and a broader range of companies. We also feel that it's really essential for regulators like FISRA to understand the regulatory barriers and the challenges to innovation. And I think this partnership is really going to give us another avenue to do that and bring some new and different insights and perspectives to inform, our approach and activities in the innovation space. And then we're also really hoping that more fintechs and other players in the innovation ecosystem are going to have the opportunity to learn more about FISRA and its innovation mandate.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll just add on to that is I think that at times founders and entrepreneurs come in and they might not really understand what the regulatory components are or not understand how to build a relationship with a regulatory agency. And so this partnership really aims to kind of break down those barriers so that they can have direct communications and direct understandings of what those regulatory barriers are, like Stephanie said, but a very clean and seamless communication channel between both entities.
And so I think, with that, Layial, the thing that I would highlight for FISRA and the Innovation Office, there's really two core features, I think, to our partnership. So the first is really strengthening awareness. The Innovation Office, and to FinTech Cadence's credit, you've really worked to embed the Innovation Office into the FinTech Cadence programming and events to help broaden the awareness of who we are, what we do, and how we support innovation. FISRA is a new player in the innovation ecosystem. So companies seeing us profiled on the FinTech Cadence website, on social media, at events, that all really helps to strengthen our brand recognition. And the second is in engagement. So, FinTech Cadence has really done a great job at curating opportunities for education and engagement. And the partnership really provides us these new opportunities to share information about how we support innovation, and even more importantly, how we support experimentation through the TLE and some of the other regulatory tools that we have. There's regular opportunities for companies to engage with the Innovation Office, and we've already started some of those activities through monthly office hours, and we're working on a Meet the Regulator event. And then I think it's also really great because it helps us to identify and connect directly with companies that are going to be potential participants in our test and learn. And I would say more generally, we're also hoping that by strengthening awareness and creating those engagement opportunities, it just makes it a little less scary for companies to have that interaction with the regulator.
Okay, excellent. Just want to dig in a little bit more deeply, Stephanie and Layial, on the value proposition. So we've understood some of the objectives and features of the partnership. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about why this partnership is important at a practical level, how it will help companies in terms of developing some of their innovative ideas, and how is it different from other partnerships that are out there so that we can understand sort of what's unique about this.
Thanks, Keith. I think similar to what I mentioned earlier, we really do see this partnership as a unique opportunity to showcase how a regulator and an innovation hub can work together to support responsible innovation. It is essential for us to be able to identify and understand regulatory barriers and challenges to innovation, keep on top of advancements and emerging trends. And we really do feel that this partnership will help provide really important insights and hopefully help innovations and regulations to evolve together. As I mentioned at the beginning, it really is not common yet to see regulators partnering with an innovation hub. And we have really appreciated that Layial and her team have already sort of embraced and understood our role as a regulator, and are ready to help us be recognized as an important part of the innovation support ecosystem. And I think another way it's different is it's not just a one-off event. And, we have direct and ongoing engagement in a number of different ways. I mentioned a couple of them earlier, with the lunch and learns, the office hours, having us profiled at FinTech Cadence events, and then other sort of more curated events, such as Meet the Regulator.
Yeah, and I think that's really well said, Steph. I think for us, the additional component that I would say is, if you look at it from a Canadian perspective, one of the biggest challenges for a fintech startup to get off the ground is around the regulatory compliance component side of things. Like I said earlier, there's a lack of knowledge and awareness or understanding of what that looks like. what does it look like when I'm building a company? When do I talk to a regulator? Do I talk to them when I have an idea? Do I talk to them when I'm building my prototype, or do I talk to them when I'm in market? And what are the compliance components that I have to go as be a part of it? And this is oversimplifying the whole process. There's so many complexities around everything that I just said and more. So the idea is all of these startups are trying to build and grow and really be innovative in the space. But they might not know the toolkit or have a toolkit and tool guide of, okay, who do I speak to at what stage of my development? And how can I ensure that this is going to be a valuable product in market, product and or service? And how do I ensure that I'm not harming consumers in any shape or form? And I think that's really what we've seen in Canada be the challenge. And I know there's a lot of conversation around regulations for fintechs in Canada. And so to be able to say, here is the regulator right in front of you. Not only are they going to be able to answer your questions, but they're willing to work with you, and they're willing to see, like Stephanie said, what are the challenges and what are the ways that we can help you and ease you through that development part of it. So I think for us, this is a no-brainer partnership, and I think it adds incredible value to the ecosystem because, and I'll be very honest, not many regulators are willing to have those conversations for whatever reason. So the fact that FISRA is not only willing to have those conversations and be part of it, but they're taking the incentive to say, we put us in front of the fintech startups, put us in front of the ecosystem, put us in front of these conversations, and we might not have all the answers, but we'll tackle these questions, and together with the ecosystem, we'll be able to build the right products for the Canadian market. And I think that's an incredible asset to be able to have.
And just before we move into the next section, I just want to explore one element of this, which is for a period of time, you may be having a lighter regulatory oversight, if I've understood this correctly. And do you ever get pushback from companies that are subject to the full regulatory expectations that, is this an even playing field? Does that ever come up?
Well, usually, if we're working with a company to design a specific test and learn environment, it really is around the very specific product or innovation or business approach that they're looking to test out a different way of doing it or trying to see the viability of a product. So it is for a very limited time. I would say that, when it comes to leveling the playing field, it really sort of depends on which angle you're looking at it from, right? Because I think we know the more traditional insurers that are already regulated have some advantages already in the market. They're larger, they already have the customer base. And then on the flip side, there are barriers that startups face when it comes to, as Layial said, either understanding compliance, or they face other bigger challenges in finding customers or finding partnerships. So I think, the sandbox is open to both incumbents and unregulated sectors. So, we really do encourage people to reach out to the innovation office to come talk to us about an idea. It really is about having that initial conversation and seeing how we might be able to move an opportunity forward.
Okay, excellent. Just want to speak a little bit about the opportunities for collaboration. In terms of the FinTech Cadence programming and events, as well as target regulatory sandboxes and test and learn environment participants, could you tell us a little bit about some of the opportunities there and some of the things we could expect to see over the course of the next year and further?
So a big one for FISRA and the Innovation Office is we know that regulatory sandboxes really are about fostering collaboration. So we want to be encouraging more firms to experiment and innovate, without that fear of inadvertently breaching regulations. I think the sandbox also provides the regulator with an opportunity to see where we need to adapt and adjust to enable more innovation. We really don't want to be putting up unnecessary roadblocks or creating additional burdens, but we always want to make sure that we're ensuring consumer protection. And I think I'll turn it over to Layial, but I thought an interesting point that we've been sort of following, or an interesting trend that we've been following, that was raised in a couple of reports that were released last year by Deloitte and Luge Capital, is something that Layial touched on, which is, this need and people recognizing the importance of collaboration to drive innovation across industry, and that the reports noted that there is a growing momentum in partnerships between traditional insurers and fintechs. But maybe I'll turn it over to you, Layial, to speak more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I will say, so we've been, like I said earlier, we've been in this ecosystem for about 8 years now. And when the growth of this fintech wave was really developing, we did start seeing a lot of financial institutions and institutions kind of look at these innovation solutions coming out and looking at them a little bit more apprehensively. I think now we're really in the stage where all entities are looking at, okay, we want to collaborate, but it's not as smooth because there's still a question of, okay, but how? How do we collaborate? Right? What are the challenges that will prevent us from collaborating? We sit on a lot of data. How can you access that data securely? We provide visibility to our consumers. How can you, as an innovator, come in and give a solution that might benefit them, but might put them in harm for breaches or fraud, et cetera? So collaboration, like Stephanie said, it is incredibly key. And I think we're seeing that happen more and more. I think now what we're trying to do, not only with this partnership, but with the programming that we have, and as Stephanie had mentioned, with the lunch and learns, with the workshops, with the meet the regulation sessions, what we're trying to say is we're going to collaborate. And this is specifically how we can collaborate. We can collaborate by understanding what is your product, and we can collaborate by you understanding what might be the harms or that might come out of consumers utilizing this product. So I think there's quite a lot of opportunities that are there. I think following what FISRA is going to be doing over the next year through our partnership is going to be really exciting for everyone here on the call, because like Stephanie said, sorry, this is the third time we're saying it, but want to make sure that you guys are able to see that if you're interested in lunch and learns, if you're interested in seeing how is FISRA going to be working with these fintechs, if you're looking to see how the TLE is going to be launched out, you'll be able to see that throughout the year. We mentioned to meet the regulators. It's going to be a good opportunity for startups to really have that personal touch point with FISRA and the TLE team specifically. But if anyone on this call is wondering, okay, well, this is really exciting. How do I do this with fintechs? How do I bring them into the team? And the first thing is just a conversation, right? Maybe reaching out to Stephanie, reaching out to myself and saying, okay, our company is consistently talking about innovation in this sense. What does that look like concretely? Does that mean we have to bring fintechs in? Does that mean we work with consultants? Does that mean we just create more visibility in the work that we're doing internally as an organization and as a company? But there's a lot of opportunities available. And I would really look at it kind of in the pillars that we saw earlier, right? Like the education component side of things. How are you collaborating would be the second. And then how are you supporting would be the third way you could look at it for those who are on the call today.
A quick follow-up. I imagine that some of these projects might be quite sensitive commercially, or competitively sensitive, in the sense that a company might be exploring something that they think would give them an advantage or that others haven't explored. How do you manage that in terms of ensuring that they're comfortable that an idea won't filter into a competitor's sort of radar screen?
Yeah, confidentiality is one of those things that's built into the parameters of our test and learn and TLE development process. So we've heard this a number of times through our own engagements with stakeholders over the last few years. And so confidentiality is something that, like I mentioned, we do build into the TLE process.
Okay, excellent. Rob, I'm going to pass it over to you to ask some of your questions.
Great. Thanks, Keith. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Layial. Thank you both for being here today to share your wealth of knowledge. I know you've both introduced, we talked about fintechs, we've talked about insurtechs. I was just wondering if you both could speak to Ontario's fintech innovation landscape more broadly in the sense of what trends are you currently seeing and what challenges you see emerging. Whoever wants to start first, please.
Definitely a Layial question. So Layial, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that. So when we're looking at the ecosystem, the easiest way in Canada to look at what is a thriving fintech ecosystem is to look at, of course, how the financial sector is looking, right? And when I say financial sector, I'm really talking about insurance, the banks, credit unions, the whole gambit. Ontario, by nature of size, economic development, and history, has a lot of strong institutions around the financial space already established here. I know there are other regions, Quebec is incredibly strong when it comes to insurance, especially in Quebec City. We see a lot of credit unions that are strong out in the West and in the Atlantic, very community-based financial systems. So you can look at it that way. So Ontario in and of itself is very strong in the financial sector. And so by default, fintech sector is also very strong because there is access and direct relationships with these institutions. There is access to investment and capital. And then, of course, by population and the universities here and the industry, there's a lot of talent, as we call it, but individuals that are then able to build companies. So Ontario is very strong in that sense. I will caveat or put the asterisk that there are still other regions in Canada that are growing and that are very strong in their respective subsegments. But definitely at large, Ontario is one of the strongest sectors here. I think that was the first part of your question, Robin. I will apologize. The second part of the question is the growth part of it.
Sorry, the second part of the question is about trends or challenges emerging. So I guess that could relate to growth as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I do apologize. Had a bit of a mind blank there. So when we look at the trends, you'll see, and again, we touched on it a little bit earlier, we'll see that the areas that are growing, or the sectors that are growing within fintech in Ontario are, of course, the payment space, insurance as well. I can't emphasize that enough. Wealth tech, wealth management, that's in large part and thanks to the wave of Wealthsimple, et cetera. We're seeing neobanks and neo products come out as well. So that's where you look at maybe the EQ banks. Those are also pretty strong coming out of here. You'll also see prop tech, and prop tech is anything around real estate, property management, lending, et cetera. That would fall under that. And so we're seeing the prop tech, the fintech subvertical under that grow quite a lot here as well in Ontario. And the challenges are very, very similar to the rest of Canada. And here's where I'll be a little careful, but if anyone peruses any fintech influencers LinkedIn profile, you're going to start seeing very, very repetitive thematics of the challenges for fintech startups. One, our investors are not adventurous. Investors are looking for investments that are almost zero risk, especially in comparison to what's happening in the United States, who are a bit more brazen, a bit more ready to invest, and a bit more willing to take risks on founders and the ideas that they're doing that. So in Ontario, one of the biggest challenges has and will always be the amount of capital that's allocated to these founders. And in fact, what you'll see is you'll hear founders say, we've been in Canada looking for investments over the last 10 years, and we entered the US market, and 2 months in, we've already raised $20–30 million. So, and that's not just a one-time offshoot story. You'll hear that continuously. The second is, of course, the relationship between the financial sector and the fintech sector. So I know we talked earlier about the collaboration around that, but I think one thing to not kind of make everything seem really rosy is that it is also sometimes a challenge for fintechs to approach financial institutions and the financial sector. There is still is your compliance and strong enough to be able to work with institutions like us? Are you going to be taking away consumers from us, or are you going to be adding consumers to our overall financial component side of things? So I think there's still that hesitation between both those entities, and still a bit of a lack of awareness in how we do that. And very, very opportune to this conversation, that I'll just say the last challenge that you'll find startups facing is the regulatory barrier. And that's exactly what this partnership is about. It's not to undersell the challenges, the other two challenges, but operating and navigating the regulatory space is a huge challenge for our startups here in Canada. Regulations has been one of our saving grace as an economy. And so there's a lot of strengths that are there. But when it comes to innovation, there's still a battle in terms of how do we move fast enough while keeping our regulatory ethos in place. And I think I'll stop there, Robin, but you'll see the challenges and trends through those three components.
Thank you. That's great. I do have one question. When you talk about wealth management and wealth tech, this is just a question because I'm 28, so I'm in the Gen Z. Do you find that is usually younger generations that are more interested in sort of, neobanks, neo products? Is there any generational differences?
Yeah, there's two things there. So it's funny that you say you're Gen Z. I wouldn't have seen. So there's two component side of things. One, for the majority of the Wealthsimples, those kind of applications that you see, yes, Canada by nature, not only by our investments, but also by our consumers, are very conservative. I think the statistics is crazy. It's somewhere around 80% of consumers will be with the same bank that they opened when they were kids, which is really it's a really long-term relationship that you have with the financial institution. And more often than not, it's the same financial institution you've had that your parents might have had or your parents opened. So yes, the wealth simples, et cetera, are more leaning and are very UX focused for the younger generations. But that's not to say that wealth tech, fintech sector is only for that. There's a huge wave of solutions that are coming in with baby boomers and how they're investing their money, how they're transitioning that wealth, as well as a huge component, how they're going to move away from working to retirement. What is the support that they need? So just kind of even looking at it from an insurance perspective, what's the kind of support they'll need to manage that wealth as they go into their retirement and past that? So the bigger names that you might have heard that we mentioned might be geared more for millennial, Gen Zs and younger, but in reality, there's so much opportunities as well for the whole age groups, especially the older age groups that we've mentioned.
So interesting. Thank you, Fran. That was a little random question because I was so curious about that. But so I guess in regards to the Ontario ecosystem, as you're talking about, it's very dynamic. Where does relationship building fit into this in the sense of like how important is it to the ecosystem? What degree of importance would you give it? And that's for both of you, regulatory and also industry.
Yeah. Do you want me to take that one as well, Stephanie? You can answer that one very quickly. We usually joke like you can't build a fintech without some form of a relationship with a financial institution or the financial sector, whether that means you're building a sales relationship, a partnership relationship, consumer testing relationship. You need to have some form of a relationship with the sector. You cannot grow, you cannot scale your business without that. So partnerships and collaboration is not it's a nice to have, it's that you need to have this. Or it's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to kind of scale through. So I think it's incredibly key. I think the ecosystem is trying to figure that out. In fact, today I had conversations with 2 large financial institutions talking about the challenges they're facing in the intention of we want to work with fintechs and we want to integrate fintechs, and the reality that they're getting from other business units, or the reality of just being able to operate with these kind of components. So I think the desire is there. There's no can we or should we, there's a we have to. And now I think that the whole sector, both traditional incumbents and new, are trying to figure out how do we do this and how do we do it quickly. And that, by the way, as well ties in very, very clearly with the regulatory side of conversations and collaborations too.
Yeah, I would echo similar sentiments to what Layial was highlighting. And I think we've touched on already in some of the previous questions where the strong partnerships with industry and the regulator, and through partnerships like this, where we're broadening our reach on who we're connecting with, because I think it is our connection to industry, but there is a broader ecosystem where there's a number of players and a number of different actors that are all moving towards the same objective of, stronger financial services sector. And so us working together more collaboratively and finding opportunities and spaces to do that is really critical.
Great, thank you. I'm just taking notes while you guys are answering my questions. Thank you for that. So kind of on that subject then, Stephanie, can you speak to how FSRA's approach to supporting and enabling innovation aligns with other regulators across Canada, just in connection to that relationship building?
Sure. Like I would say generally, we're all facing similar challenges associated with the rapid rate of new and emerging technologies. And those are always evolving, and we're having to figure out and assess the impacts that those are having on the financial services sector. We definitely engage with our counterparts and peer regulators to share information, to identify shared priorities, having awareness of similar initiatives. So for instance, we're aware of the regulatory sandbox that Alberta launched in 2022. And we know our colleagues at the AMF and OSC published discussion papers last year on AI. So there are always important things that we can learn from each other, and that continuous learning and sharing of information is essential. But I want to kind of highlight that the approach and the programming or the initiatives are highly tailored to really fit the unique features of our respective sectors and our provinces. And so I think that would be an important thing to highlight, that even though we're learning from each other and we're seeing what everyone else is doing, it does have to fit the context.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because each province is different. So how does it extend, I guess, for FISRA to relationship building internationally? I know there are areas like the UK and Australia and Singapore that have all developed federal level regulatory sandboxes for fintechs. So I'd just be curious if FISRA is influenced by these international jurisdictions at all.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So the jurisdictions that you identified are more established regulators, and they have more established national regulatory sandboxes. But we absolutely do learn from them, and we do look to them for best practices, for lessons learned, really wanting to see what has worked, and more importantly, what hasn't worked. Especially since we're relatively early in our own journey, comparatively speaking. But I think it's been interesting to see those successful sandboxes and how they've acted as a bridge in some way between innovation and regulation, particularly the FCA, which is largely recognized as a true sort of pioneer in the space. They launched the first financial services regulatory sandbox almost 10 years ago. And so we've been watching their journey and seeing how they've been able to successfully expand their sandbox, but have also introduced other like innovation related activities and initiatives.
Great, thank you so much. So Keith, back over to you now to close out the webinar. Thank you both for answering my questions.
Thanks, Robin. I did have a couple more questions just before we close out. I wanted to mention one of the features of the products that CAFII members offer, which is that often they're underwritten by an insurer, but they're actually offered to the client by a distributor like a bank or credit union. So in many cases, a fintech innovation would require collaborating with two separate organizations that are partners, but still completely separate companies with different technologies, different legacy systems. Have you encountered that in terms of the challenges that it raises, and any suggestions in terms of how to move forward with that slightly more complex business model?
I would say from a test and learn environment, we haven't had anyone approach us to talk about an arrangement of that type. But some of the devils are in the details with respect to the partnership. But I would say nothing's out of the realm of possible. So it really is about coming to talk to FISRA about an idea or an opportunity. And I think we really are about working to find a way to make that test happen or to allow that testing to move forward. So I would say if someone is thinking about something in that realm, really it's about having a conversation with FISRA, and the Innovation Office will bring in our sector experts and other people across the organization, and we're going to try and find a path forward for it.
And I'll just add from a fintech perspective, I think one of the key things, and this is why these conversations are really important, is if you're a fintech that's servicing, like for Keith, the example that you've given, you do have to understand that whole life cycle of that product and that whole life cycle of that service. So when you look at some of these insurtech fintechs, so you'll see companies like Emma, Allset, Painworth, Flora, and Fertility, excuse me. You'll see all of them have an understanding of, okay, well, what does that potentially look like? But then when I bring in other stakeholders as part of the process, how do I navigate, work with them? And what are the regulatory components that are needed now to work with the various ones? I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, but one of the challenges in Canada is that insurance and other component parts of regulations are done so provincially as well, right? So now I'm not only building a product that might hit various stakeholders, but I'm also doing a product that might hit various stakeholders that have different regulations depending on the province that I'm now approaching. So I think this is the skill set that entrepreneurs in this space really need to have. And that's why it's incredibly important to be able to do so in a TLE, like the learning environment that Stephanie mentioned, so that you have that support and safety net as you go through that, because it can get really complicated really quickly.
Well, I'm happy you mentioned that, Layial, because one of the challenges that CAFII constantly sort of raises with regulators is we completely understand that constitutionally insurance is regulated provincially, but many of our companies are national. And so, the challenge is to try to have as much harmonization as possible, or in the absence of harmonization, at least collaboration, so that there's consistency and there's at least some common themes. And so
Yeah, exactly.
I think that if that is happening among the regulators in terms of their different approaches to innovation, that would be something that would be applauded by industry, and I think ultimately would help all of the jurisdictions in terms of their objectives.
Yeah, and if I can just very quickly add here, Keith, is the other component to think about. So of course, there's the way that you develop understanding the stakeholders and the geographic jurisdiction, but it's also really expensive for a new company, right, to operate and be able to understand all these different components. So now I'm building a company in Ontario, and as we said, capital is not that available, but now I got to expand it into Alberta because of course that's how I'm going to scale as a company. I might need a lawyer who understands the Alberta regulatory compliance side of things. And so that's where we also have to just be cognizant. If you want more innovation, how do we lower the barriers of costs as much as possible? And how can we, so like Stephanie was saying, these sandboxes are the best example to be able to look at the ways to do that so that you can lower those risks and have these innovations. If you truly believe innovation, have these innovations grow and scale and be sustainable businesses.
I wanted to ask a question about success. So I think one of the things that's important to understand around innovation is that when you're trying new things, it's risky, and not 100% of the projects will end up being viable, right? And so, Stephanie, if somebody looked at the number of projects you had and maybe 50% of them didn't end up developing into something full scale, I mean, I think that that's not a bad thing. That's to be expected. Is that something that you need to sort of articulate, because you wouldn't want people to be using the wrong gauge in terms of identifying success or outcomes that are positive. Not all of these projects, by their very nature, are going to end up making it.
Yeah, I think there's a few different things to consider if you're a company or two companies coming to look to test in the TLE. There is a lot of learnings to be had in the insights that you get during that duration of testing or experimenting. You get great insights about the viability of your product or your business model. You get to see whether or not there's the consumer uptake that you would hope to see. So in some ways, it sort of validates some of the things that you would hope to see from a successful product. I kind of mentioned some of it in the presentation as well, where you get to better understand some of the regulatory pieces that would impact your particular technology. And I think even there's the element, and Layial can probably speak better to this, where you're taking those insights and the learnings from the testing or what you get to see during the experimentation, because it's happening in a sort of live, real market, real customers, and you get to iterate and sort of make improvements from those learnings to your product, to your service, to your business model. So to your point, Keith, I think it is those types of things that are also considered benefits or could be considered successes from a TLE project.
And I think this is really important for everyone in the audience to kind of understand as well the numbers that, or the stats that Stephanie and Fitzrose are working on, right? The idea is that if you're a tech startup, there's 8 or 9 out of 10 that will not succeed, right? So Keith, you said it was some. It's a huge stats going against you as an entrepreneur trying to build. But if everyone on this call agrees, okay, in Canada, we need more innovation. We need more innovation in the insurance sector. We need more small businesses to develop in this area, and we need more collaboration to happen. And you understand that the stats that they're looking at is that 8 out of 10 of people who are going to come up with these kind of solutions it's just not going to work. So the idea is, okay, well, how can we all together work together to ensure that it's not 8 out of 10 that are not working, that maybe it's 5 out of 10 that are not working. And that's why it's really important to say, okay, Fitzrose's team is going to meet with as many as possible that align with the categories that they need. But the success metric is year on year, is that pool decreasing in terms of failure rates? And is that stat decreasing as well? And I think it's a really tough sector to be in. And I don't think it's to be underplayed how difficult it will be to see those success metrics develop.
All right, well, that's excellent. Well, we've come to the end of our webinar. You've been a terrific panel, Stephanie, Layial. We've certainly learned a lot from both of you and given our attendees a lot to think about. Stephanie, I'll start with you, and then you, Layial, for your last words of advice and last thoughts.
Yeah, I think, just building on all the messaging that you've heard today, FISRA really is an innovator, a partner in innovating. And please reach out to the Innovation Office to learn either more about how we can support you or any ideas that you might have.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that, and I'll also say there is a lot of opportunity here in Canada, and there's a lot of things that we can be doing to ensure that this space is growing. So have a conversation internally, reach out to us. Please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn as well at FinTech Cadence to see the kind of events that are happening, especially around the partnership with FISRA. So make sure you're following us there to hear what's happening in the FinTech space in general. And like we said, the best way to get started is just to have a conversation. You don't even have to have a plan. You can just reach out to any of us and we can talk, and happy to expand more on what we're thinking too.
All right, excellent. Well, Stephanie, Layial, thank you both very much on behalf of Robin, myself, and CAFII. And to all our attendees, thank you for joining today. And I wish everyone a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.